Healthy forests are essential to the biological, aesthetic, commercial, and cultural values of British Columbians. Hi, I'm Rod Phillips, your host. I'd like to introduce you to an aspect of forestry practice called forest health. BC's vast wilderness areas offer many recreational opportunities, and we are one of the richest sources of high-quality wood products in the world. BC alone supplies 32% of global softwood lumber, 50% of pulp, and 10% of newsprint. With this kind of wealth, it's no wonder that on the international scene, we have become high-profile citizens in terms of forestry practice. Although our harvesting and regeneration techniques are both praised and criticized, it's obvious that the majority of British Columbians are deeply committed and concerned about sustaining their forest resource. Recent statistics indicate that every year approximately 25 million cubic meters of wood are lost to or damaged by insects and diseases. This amount is equivalent to 1/3 of the timber harvested each year in BC. Chronic damage and epidemics occur frequently and are expected in many forests. Over the years, disturbances from wildfire, windstorms, insect outbreaks and disease have led to the current mosaic of British Columbia's forests. Many of the young and old-growth forests seen today are the result of these events. Basically, forest health is the ability of the forest to resist or recover from natural or human-caused disturbances. Forest health, a branch of silviculture, was established in the 80s, largely in response to the catastrophic losses caused by insects such as the mountain pine beetle and the western spruce budworm. During the 70s and 80s, these pests destroyed millions of trees over hundreds of thousands of hectares. Today, forest health uses a preventative strategies approach that covers all stages of forest ecosystem management, from seedling to mature forest. Reducing timber losses caused by the bark beetle is a major forest health practice in many areas of BC. Helicopter logging is a new and unique method now being used for this purpose. Forest health's emphasis is on early detection, using trap trees and pheromone lures to attract beetles to infested trees that are then felled and extracted, so this timber can be utilized. Hey Dave, how you doing?
Hi Rod, good to see you again.
This is Dave Piggin. He's a forest health officer here in the Kamloops District.
Are you ready to go?
Sure am.
Dave, what are the benefits of using helen logging for the control of the bark beetle?
On this site, we are doing a control and salvage operation to control the Douglas fir bark beetle. In this case, if we didn't helilog this site because it's so inaccessible, we in fact would have to fall and burn the trees at the cost of $200,000. In this case, with helicopter logging, we're able to return some revenue of about $14,000.
What can you tell us about the Douglas fir beetle?
Douglas fir beetle is from a group of insects called the bark beetles. The Douglas fir beetle likes to attack trees that are dead, down, or dying. And what they do is they actually cut off the flow of nutrients and moisture to the tree, killing the tree. It's quite serious because over a large area they can do a lot of damage.
What kind of damage does this cause?
On this site that we're looking at today, there's about 100 hectares of trees that have been killed by the Douglas fir beetle.
What is the natural role of the Douglas fir beetle?
The Douglas fir beetle is very interesting and a very important species. The Douglas fir beetle likes to take dead and down trees, and what happens is they are then cycled into the forest floor because the bark beetles kill them first, and other pests then rot the tree out. Birds like woodpeckers feed on the larvae, and when they build their homes, they then become habitat as well.
Are there other solutions to the beetle problem?
Yes, on large infestations, we use harvesting to control the population. On smaller infestations, we'll use falling and burning and trap trees so we can protect the site. We also use sexual attractants and pheromone baits wherever possible.
What is being done to prevent future outbreaks?
So we do a lot of aerial surveys and ground surveys, so we catch the infestation when it's very small. It's very important because we can save a lot of money and we can have less damage to the site. It's very common, in fact, to have a Douglas fir beetle infestation show up on private land, and in that case we get the landowners to get a hold of us and get some expert advice on what to do.
Foresters now recognize that what they see as unhealthy could have been the result of well-intentioned past activities. Many foresters are now faced with finding ways to treat what has already happened and to prevent such situations from developing again in the future, as we'll see in the case of the spruce budworm. This is Lorraine McLaughlin. She's a forest entomologist here in the Kamloops region. Lorraine, why have you brought us out to this area?
I thought this would be a good example of what the budworm does to a forest. The western spruce budworm is a native defoliator in British Columbia and is very severe in the Kamloops forest region.
How extensive is the damage here?
Very extensive. This outbreak lasted about 9 years, and when it was at its peak in 1987, we mapped it covering over 800,000 hectares of interior forest.
What exactly does the budworm do to these trees?
Well, the budworm feeds in its larval stage, and it damages buds, the new shoots and cones that it feeds on.
Is there a difference in the way it affects older trees as compared to younger trees?
Absolutely. The understory younger trees are much more severely impacted by the budworm's feeding, and this is simply because they have less foliage to start with and are slightly suppressed, and also by the raining of the larvae onto these trees from the overstory trees.
What is being done about the current situation?
Well, we're taking long-term and short-term approaches to the problem. Over the long term, we're trying to change the structure of the stands here by understory spacing, putting ponderosa back in, and promoting understory burns again. But we have to control the explosive budworm populations, and we do this through direct control by using BTK, which is a biological insecticide which is specific to the moths and butterflies, and the budworm is a member of this group of insects.
The southern interior of British Columbia is home to other challenging forest problems. We've discussed insects, but there are many other forest health concerns that have to be dealt with. Other diseases such as root disease, rust, and mistletoe can also be increased or decreased by forestry practices. Here's Don Norris to shed a little light on some of these other factors. Hi, Don.
Hi, Rod. How are you doing?
Not too bad, thanks.
Good.
Don is a forest pathologist here in the Nelson region. Don, this plantation looks pretty healthy. Why have you asked us to meet you here?
Well, I wanted you to see this sick tree. It has a problem with root disease. And you can tell that because of the short leader, the thin foliage, the red color to the foliage, as opposed to the normal yellow at this time of year for larch, plus the basal resinosus that's down here.
What exactly is root disease?
A root disease is a fungus that lives in the original stumps and root systems of the previous stand. And once the stand is cut, the root disease then builds up in those root systems and then transfers to the new generation of trees. Now, there's 3 major root diseases in the province. In the northern half of the province, it's Inonotus tomentosus, and on the coast, it's Phalaenus wierii, and here in the south-central interior, it's Armillaria root disease.
What role does it play in the forest?
Well, root diseases are primary killers of plant material. They begin the process of recycling as the stand is developing. With Armillaria, there's little lesions that exist in the root systems itself, and then when the tree is cut, the stump has no resistance, Armillaria moves in, and it builds up this large inoculum potential that allows it to be much worse than it ever was in nature, and it moves through the stand and killing trees just like this. Later on, when if the trees survive this mortality, then they grow at much reduced rates.
How can the problem be solved here in the Nelson region?
Basically, we have 3 techniques. All of them involving root removal. The first technique is backhoe destumping. Then we have pushover logging, which removes the root material at the time of harvesting. And if we can't do the root disease treatments at the harvesting stage because of site sensitivities, then in 12 or 13 years after harvesting, we can come back and do something called pop-up spacing.
Animal damage can also be an issue, especially in coastal parts of the province.
They look a little strange, but they do the job quite well.
We're with Ron DeProse. He's a forest health officer on the Sunshine Coast here on Texada Island. Ron, what are these blue and yellow tubes doing on the trees here?
These are vexor tubes. They've been put on this one-year-old plantation to protect against deer browsing.
What is deer browsing and why is it such a problem here?
Well, deer browsing is when the deer eat the top and side branches on these freshly planted seedlings. And as you can see around us, there's very little forage for the deer to eat. So they really like the succulent trees that come out of the nurseries because they're high in nutrients like fertilizers. And another problem is just the sheer numbers of the deer. There's over 3,000 animals estimated to be on Texada Island.
How many areas on Texada here are treated this way each year?
Well, each year we do between 10 and 15 blocks, or roughly 200 hectares. And that would include the installation of tubes and then the annual maintenance.
So are there advantages or disadvantages to this method?
Well, the advantage to vexor tubes is it's very effective, and the disadvantage is like the cost, the high labor cost. Like it's $1.50 to do a tree, and that includes the installation, the wire and tube.
So are there other methods being used then?
Yes, we've tried a number of different projects on Texada, from predator odor trials, chemical repellents, deer fencing, and also with Ministry of Environment, habitat manipulation plus alternate forage.
What other animals cause serious problems here or in other parts of the province?
Well, within the province, in the Prince Rupert region, porcupines cause considerable damage up there, and there's also some squirrel damage. And on Texada, we've had problems with voles in some of our juvenile space stands where they've girdled the lower stem.
So will this be a juvenile space stand someday?
Yeah, in 10 years or more, it'll be a healthy young forest here.
Well, hopefully by now you've got a pretty good idea of what forest health is all about. As we have seen, it certainly is complex and requires a combination of many ideas and a lot of innovative planning. Foresters still have much to learn and may have some interesting changes to make to forestry practices. Whatever the issues may be, forest health will strive to meet the economic and environmental demands of British Columbians today and for the future.